Good morning. I'll call to order the Arapahoe County public meeting for August 15th, 2017. To my left is Ron Carl, County Attorney, and to my right is Jolene Sanchez, Assistant Clerk to the Board. Ms. Sanchez, would you call the roll of the Board, please?
Commissioner Jackson? Here. Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Conti? Good morning. Good morning. Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Commissioner Sharp?
Here. Commissioner Baker, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Carl, are there any modifications to the agenda this morning?
There are no modifications.
I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Motion made by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Conti. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Motion passes unanimously. We have two ceremonies this morning. The first one is recognition of finance for receiving the 2017 Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. So, welcome, Janet and procurement team.
Welcome. Thank you.
Well, mostly the procurement team. We are missing one member. Yeah, too bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for taking this time out this morning to recognize our Cracker Jack purchasing team here. The purchasing division here just won the 2017 Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award, and they're the only ones in the state to have done so. So we would like to congratulate them on definitely superior service all of this time, and thank you. And Keith,
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything?
I'd just like to thank my staff, because without it, it couldn't be achieved. I'm just the one that guides the ship. They're the ones that do all the heavy lifting, and thanks to them that we are shining stars as usual. The Institute of Supply Management also is the one, if you ever hear the market reports, the economic indicators on the condition of the economy, I am one of the people who help give information for that report. So we are recognized in that fashion as well. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson, would you?
Thank you. I have in front of me the letter that informed us of the award, so I want to let everybody know what you had to do in order to win this prestigious award. This comes from Brian Garrity, who's got an alphabet after his name, and a whole lot of different kinds of things, but he is the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award Officer. And he says that he's pleased to inform us that our agency's procurement department has earned the 2017 Annual Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. The continuously evolving AEP criteria are designed to measure the state of the art in best practices. Arapahoe County government is one of 3 agencies in Colorado and one of only 48 counties in the United States and Canada to receive the award. Your organization has received the award for 8 consecutive years. Congratulations. Now let me just read you what this says below in terms of what this is. The Achievement of Excellence in Procurement recognizes organizational excellence in public and nonprofit procurement. The award criteria are designed to measure innovation, professionalism, procurement, for some reason I can't say that word, productivity and leadership attributes of the procurement function. The Achievement of Excellence in Procurement is sponsored by the National Procurement Institute, NPI, the California Association of Public Procurement Officials, the Florida Association, I'm going to just kind of skip that, the Institute for Supply Management, the Institute for Public Procurement, National Association of Educational, the Texas Public and the Canadian public. So this is actually, since we have Canada here, an international award. And when you get an award from your peers, that really means something. So congratulations to you and to the team. We are so very proud of you. This is an area that people don't really think about very much, but is so important to the smooth functioning of our county and to make sure that we do things right. So thank you very much for your dedication, each one of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just like yesterday, we ask and make sure if we have a waiver of bid that we've met all of the requirements and we've done everything we need to do to make sure that we are absolutely transparent in what we do, and this is the team that helps us make those good decisions. So our second ceremony this morning is retirement ceremony for Thomas Andrich, Senior Network Engineer, Information Technology. And let's see, there's David. Welcome, David.
Commissioners, good morning. This is Thomas Andrich.
Hi.
He often is seen around 2 a.m. working on the network. So we're glad to see him on the daylight side. So.
A little tired, but.
A little tired, right. But now these moments are I think, joyful on one hand and sad on the other. But it's important, I think, to acknowledge the great work that Thomas has done while he's been at the county for 22 years. And he's been just a very, very valuable member of the team, contributed much to the department, the IT department, as well as the county. And, I also really respect Thomas for his engineering wisdom. He's done some fabulous things over the many years he's been here, far longer than I've been here. But he's done some wonderful things about which I'll talk about in just a moment. So I'd like to read a resolution to the board and seek your approval, if I may. Whereas Thomas Andrich began his career with Arapahoe County on November 1st, 1994, and will retire on August 18th, 2017, after 22 years of valuable service in the Information Technology Department. And whereas Thomas is a key member of the IT department and has served as a senior network engineer within the IT department. And whereas Thomas started his career as a systems analyst 2 for human services, then later was transferred to IT as a network systems engineer before getting promoted to his final role as a senior network engineer. And whereas Thomas provided invaluable expert technical skills and knowledge in transitioning the county from, haven't heard this word in a long time, Novell NetWare servers to the Microsoft NT server environment. And whereas Thomas launched the county's first enterprise network systems management platform that led to greater visibility and awareness, fault and performance management of the network infrastructure and servers that critical county applications were run on. And whereas Thomas implemented the county's first enterprise wireless network infrastructure from Aruba Networks and later selected and implemented Cisco Meraki to replace the Aruba Networks wireless infrastructure, all during his tenure. And whereas Thomas was instrumental in designing the use of the same wireless infrastructure technology to provide critical virtual private networking to support vote centers, network operations used in county elections ever since 2012. And whereas Thomas's institutional knowledge, skills, and generous personality have touched many people here at the county, and even though he will be greatly missed, the IT staff is certain that he will be a valued asset to his new employer in Sarasota, Florida. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Arapahoe County, the Board hereby officially recognizes the contribution that Thomas Andrich has made as a valued employee of Arapahoe County, and hereby declares that his future shall prosper as Arapahoe County has under his dedication and service.
And I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Baker.
I'd like to, with pleasure, make the motion to approve this resolution. I don't remember the first project that we worked on together, but I'm sure it had something to do with either the 17-mile house or human services back when I was in that department. But we've worked together on any number of different projects. And I valued so much your expertise, your technological acumen. You've always had the county's best interests at heart, the employees, making sure that their work environment was fully up to standard, and so much appreciate that. So I will make that motion to approve this resolution.
Heartily second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Conti. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Of course, no opposition, except we would hope you wouldn't leave. But, it sounds like, Thomas, you have just touched so many important areas over your career, over 23 years, I guess, almost 23, with the county. And that contribution is significant. And as you're reading all the changes in the technology over the years and applications, it's wonderful and we very much appreciate your contribution. And we know if the network goes down or doesn't work properly for us, then we're at a dead stop. And so very much appreciate all of your work and contribution, and wish you the very best.
Thank you. I definitely want to thank the board and the organization as a whole for the opportunity to serve the Arapahoe County for all these years. And this is really going to be tough. I'm going to miss all my peers and my coworkers. And this is really tough for me. So it was a really hard decision because I really enjoy working here. But it was the best for me to do. So I have to go.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Holan.
I would only add, take lots of sunscreen when you're out in your boat fishing, and don't forget the hat. It's important. Congratulations and good luck with your next endeavor.
Thank you very much. Okay, now is the time in our agenda where we have the citizen comment period. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak during comment period on anything that is not on the agenda today? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Holan, seconded by Commissioner Conti. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We have 2 public hearing items today, and I will take them together in terms of any public testimony, but we will vote on them separately. The first one is P16-021 Prosper number 1 preliminary plat, and public hearing 2016-022 Prosper number 1 final development plan. And our presenter is Mr. Bill Skinner, Senior Planner, Public Works and Development, and our attorney is Mr. Robert Hill, Senior Assistant County Attorney. Mr. Hill, would you set the foundation for both of these public hearings?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Both public hearings for the final development plan and the preliminary plat have been noticed in accordance with Land Development Code by publication, mailing, and posting of the property. The board has jurisdiction to proceed on both hearings.
Thank you, Mr.
One
Hill.
hearing for both items.
Okay, and
Mr. Skinner.
And for Mr. Hill's peace of mind, he saw the notice that ran in the Villager. We also ran that in the Scout. Since this is in the eastern environs, we wanted to hit that newspaper. I have, for the commissioners, late-breaking news in the form of emails that we want to have in front of you, and we've got a additional recommended condition of approval that I have in my hand. There just wasn't time to get it to you before now, so I'm going to pass that out real quick for you to have it in front of you.
Okay.
motions. New motions. New draft motions. We have an email written today. Well,
Thank you. Yes. Sounding familiar.
This, I'll explain who that is. This is all one piece.
Okay. Okay.
Nothing like last minute changes. Okay, so you have.
Pardon me, before you get started, I think Commissioner Baker has a statement.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention that I've received several communications in opposition to this matter, including one that was supposedly written on behalf of the Homeowners Association, which I forwarded to the Planning Department. I think that's part of the packet you handed out for inclusion in the official file. Former Commissioner Rod Bockenfeld, who is a constituent of mine, and his wife informed me that the letter writer was not on the HOA board, nor had there been a vote in the community to justify the positions expressed in the letter. Subsequently, former Commissioner Bockenfeld expressed his support of the Prosper F Final Development Plan, which I again forwarded to the Planning Division for inclusion in the official file. I just wanted to say that I'm able to hear these applications impartially and make a decision based on the evidence presented in the record here today.
Okay.
Commissioner Baker.
I don't have the connection on what name goes with the phone call from Rod, but I could proceed without that. One of the letters I brought forward came in from Cody Walkup. He essentially wanted to know why the oil and gas site potentially shown in the Prosper plan was on the eastern end instead of on the western side. There's more detail in that, but that's the crux, and this will be part of the record that gets you to the actual document if you need to refer to it from the minutes. And then another one from Becky Roberts. It's 3 pages. It's extensive. There's a lot of information. It's, going to be difficult to digest in this context. But it also includes the surface use agreement, and there's another exhibit on the back of that. The notice of public hearing was attached to that. That's the largest packet that I gave you. And then the third piece are draft motions revised by staff and provided for the commissioners for the P16022 FDP application revised 814. You'll see 4 conditions there. The conversation continued to evolve. Condition 1 and 2 are exactly the same as you have in your board summary report, in your draft motions you had a week and a half ago. Condition 3 is a new condition provided with on advisement from the county's legal staff. Staff is very, very strongly recommending we do include Condition 3 should we get to a position of a motion of approval. Condition 4 was something that we were working through, wanted to make sure we had it on paper if we needed it. At this point in time, I don't think staff is recommending we include Condition 4. There are other pieces in play that provide that assurance better. Does a better job at doing the same thing. We're a little worried that Condition 4 could create some unintended consequences. So should we get to a motion for approval based on the staff recommendation, please exclude Condition 4 unless the commissioners have reason to do otherwise.
So, Mr. Skinner, where would, when you reference that would be discussed someplace else, where would that be?
Condition 4 deals specifically with possibly displaying all potential oil and gas sites within the Prosper No. 1 FDP area, having them all indicated on the final development plan. That seems a little risky. First place, the PDP makes allowances, as it should, that the way gas and oil works, the way severed mineral rights work, possibly that could go anywhere in Prosper. So unless we basically dashed in all of the FDP and said the entire plan is a possibility, which is a bit of a redundant maneuver. And then I'm going to ask Jeff Vogel to speak a little bit about his surface use agreement. It gets to a little higher level of specificity. It's included with one of the letters for the record. It's just a much more elegant document to do that than trying to use a blanket condition,
Okay.
which may contradict one of the better documents.
Indicated on the FDP. That's what, and so not making it that specific.
Right. There is one site shown on the FDP, largely as a courtesy. There has been an application for that site. It has been withdrawn. We have no active application at this time for the site indicated on the FDP, but one may come back, one may not. It's unknown at this time. But we do feel leaving it on there as a kind of a heads up, hey, potentially something could be here is still a fine idea.
Okay. And I'm going to ask Mr. Hill to talk about condition number 3 because that was a concern of a number of people in the public and with respect to oil and gas drilling and sites. And so, Mr. Hill, would you discuss if this is number 3 is put into the approval? I mean, our motions here have approval, denial, or it can be something in between. But should number 3 be adopted, can you explain what that would mean?
Yes, certainly. The purpose for this condition is really to clarify that the approval, if the board is inclined to approve, of course, of the Prosper development, it does not constitute approval of any oil and gas operations anywhere on Prosper, whether or not they are sites are shown on the FDP or the preliminary plat or any of the documents. If anyone wants to operate, whether it's ConocoPhillips or whoever happens to own the mineral rights underneath the Prosper property, they will be required to seek a separate permit from the state and from the county through the county's use by special review or administrative use by special review process. That permit application for drilling operations is reviewed. It's a separate proceeding. It has no connection to the board's consideration of the development application in front of us today. Except for the USR process, the county zoning regulations don't really address oil and gas development. The USR process does allow the county to impose conditions of approval to mitigate public health, safety, and welfare concerns associated with the proposed oil and gas development, so long as those conditions do not conflict with the state regulation of oil and gas development. There's always a preemption question on local conditions that may go it a step beyond what the state allows, or authorize something that the state prohibits, or prohibit something that the state authorizes. That's sort of the sticky issue with county regulation of oil and gas development on a local issue. I do want to make it clear that if the board is inclined to deny the Prosper development, that won't have any impact whatsoever on whether or not the owner of mineral rights under Prosper's property, the severed mineral rights, that won't affect their ability to come forward and exploit those rights, through a state permit and a USR process. It's just, they're two separate things. Finally, the county really has no effective basis to impose conditions of approval that purport to control the oil and gas development on Prosper land. For purposes of planned unit development applications, such as Prosper, the Arapahoe County Land Development Code does not contain specific standards upon which to impose conditions of approval on the PUD development that will control subsequent oil and gas development. To attempt to do so without supporting code provisions in the Land Development Code could be considered arbitrary and subject to challenge. So, and then as a final point, the condition 3, which is the one added by staff here, it definitely needs to go in the FDP if the board is inclined to approve the FDP, but I think I would also recommend adding it to the preliminary plat approval as well if the board is inclined to approve the preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. And Mr. Vogel can talk a little bit more about that during the applicant presentation.
Yes.
Mr. Skinner.
Back on track.
Yes.
Okay, so we're hearing two applications together. One is P16021. It is a preliminary plat. The second is P16022. It is a final development plan. Just note, as I go through this, the acreages are not the same. The final development plan works as a site planning document. It is for a much larger area than the preliminary plat. Just wanted to double check that. There's been a lot of change this morning. We will ultimately bring an application to you for a final plat. There's still one more platting step to go through on this, but everything's still fine. The fact that they're not coming to us in the order that you're necessarily used to seeing them doesn't present any operational or procedural problems. We're okay. Let's start with the preliminary plat. The preliminary plat, the 021 application, is for 223 acres located generally south and east of the interchange of Watkins Road and Interstate 70. It's within the area of the Prosper PDP, which was submitted in 2012 and subsequently approved by the board after a lot of work. The 223-acre plat eventually provides for 442 single-family detached residential units, sites for parks, a community center, and supporting infrastructure and roadways. The parks and home sites will be detailed in the FDP. The FDP itself is a 743-acre plan, proposes the design and location of lots for 970 single-family detached residential units. Is the commercial still in there? Okay. It's something that I had off on the Planning Commission. So 970 single-family detached residential lots, sites for parks, a community center, a school, fire station. All of these, with the exception of the residential lots, will undergo a more detailed review. Right now, staff has seen the preliminary plans for the community center and the discovery center will see plans for a park site, but they're going to come through the process as location and extents that go to the Planning Commission. If you were concerned because you see a hole in the plan that says community center, that's because that detail is being provided elsewhere. With a community this large, we're going to have a lot of separate applications to cover all the loose ends. Staff has been working with this plan, as I said, from the inception of the PDP, which is about 2012. We find the FDP to be in compliance with the PDP as it needs to be to come forward to you. Staff is supportive of this, and it went to the Planning Commission and came through Planning Commission with a vote 5-0 supporting, 2 absent and excused. So essentially, for the people we had on hand that night, a unanimous vote. Despite the correspondence we have in front of us today, which expresses concerns from citizens about this, I was quite pleased that I did not hear a lot of negative coming from the public as we went through this. Generally speaking, there have been details to work out with sister agencies and so forth. Staff has taken those in hand, as has the applicant, and moved through those and obtained satisfactory answers on everything that's appropriate for this at this time. There are, of course, issues left open about the Prosper development at large, but we're going to be working on this for a number of decades. We don't anticipate having all the full-scale issues solved at this time. But we think we're in good order for what we've got in front of you today. We did have some public speak at the Planning Commission. Their concerns were, by and large, safety regarding gas and oil sites. It wasn't necessarily what the applications were speaking to, but it is riding on the fringe of all of it, so we understand why they came to speak. I'm going to stop there and ask for questions of me, but suggest we go to the applicant's presentation. They've been working on this longer than we have. They got a lot of information in hand.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, just one thing that I noted, aside from the issues that you've talked about, was the traffic and the ingress and egress routes, and just kind of, as you mentioned, things have been working out, and that there's decades literally left to go. I just wanted to be assured that there will be sufficient ingress and egress, because the way it looks now, it looks pretty bottled up in certain areas. We want to make sure that the folks that live there and our emergency vehicles can circulate through each phase, not just when it's done, but through each phase as it's developed.
Okay, well, I think our engineering manager is ready to talk about that. So if you'd like, I could bring Chuck Haskins up now, or we can hear from him later. Want to go now, Chuck?
Why don't we go ahead and hear from Mr. Haskins, and then that may prompt some other questions for the applicant.
Okay, and as
Thank
always,
you.
I'll be standing by.
Good morning, Board.
Good
Chuck
morning.
Haskins, Engineering Services Division. I had whispered to Jason that it'd probably be appropriate for me to get up prior to Mr. Vogel's presentation, given some of the comments from CDOT and the scale of this development, and some of the issues that came up during the preliminary development plan with respect to traffic and transportation. So I'm going to give a little overview on where we're at, and hopefully that addresses Commissioner Jackson's comments. So the board probably remembers that with the preliminary development plan, the county did a developer's agreement with Prosper. And in that developer's agreement, we solidified their contribution to the interchange improvements, as well as their commitment to study the interchange. The other thing we did in that DA was to require that they that the 1601, which is an administrative directive through CDOT, by which you modify interchanges or you add interchanges to their system, that a 1601 commence with the first final development plan. That's where we're at today, and we consider that has been done. We've met with CDOT a couple of times. Last July, we met for the last time was July 2016 and discussed how we proceed with this. There's a little bit of difference of opinion between the county and CDOT on how to proceed. And we have another meeting scheduled for September 11th next month to discuss that issue. But essentially, the county wants to proceed with a 1601 that modifies the Monaghan interchange, which serves Sky Ranch, and the Watkins interchange, which serves Prosper Development. We consider you have to study an upstream and a downstream interchange, so it makes sense to put those together, and hopefully we'll take advantage of some economies of scales with that and cost. So we want to go ahead and submit a more project level analysis that studies the interstate from Harvest Mile to Manila. Kind of takes advantage of both upstream of Monaghan and downstream of Prosper. CDOT wants to take a larger look at that, called a systems level study. They want to look at the interstate system from E470 to Strasburg. A big undertaking. We don't have any objection to that, and we've already told them that we would participate in that, and some of that data that comes out of that study can be used in the 1601 process. Except they haven't secured all the funding for their portion of that. So we're going to have another discussion in September 11th to talk about how we move forward, and we've pretty much put CDOT on notice that we're okay with the system level analysis, but we got to get going on this. And even the tone of their comment letter is you're not progressing, quickly enough with this process, which we don't agree with. I think the applicant has met the requirements of the DA. They submitted a study for this phase one, which corresponds to the final development plan for the 970 single-family units. But we want to proceed with that. Our transportation division has already got a draft scope of work developed. So we definitely want to proceed with that, just pending some agreement with Adams County, Aurora, on how to proceed with the funding element of that. So that kind of addresses the interstate type of improvements. We feel that the traffic studies supplied by the applicant's engineer addresses the issues with phase one development. The 970 single-family lots. And keep in mind something that Bill said. They will still need to come through with platting of these before they build any structures out there that generates traffic. And what staff is committing to is those plats will come before the Board of County Commissioners, and we can give you a little update on how we're progressing with this larger project at that time. But we feel that the traffic in and out of this phase one can operate at acceptable levels of service. The later phases of that, there will be a necessity to realign 6th Avenue. And there will also be a necessity to install some traffic signals to keep an acceptable level of service. Pursuant to the developers agreement that we did with the PDP. So I'm hoping I'm not missing anything. Staff feels like we have been very proactive on this project, solidifying the commitment to the applicants to the interchange project, and also having triggers, and they can't move ahead unless this is done or this level of service is met. So with that, hopefully I addressed Commissioner Jackson's comments or questions, and happy to answer any others.
That address your, okay, Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Haskins, thank you so much for being here. Just wanted to confirm that this is totally exclusionary of any of the potential oil and gas traffic that could come from the plots that they have on these maps and so forth. This is simply dealing with the construction and the development of the Prosper as far as the traffic that you're talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct. This analyzes the impacts of the 970 single-family homes only, and so it does not account for any oil and gas traffic, nor do they typically address that. That's a subsequent and a different type of analysis.
And to follow up with that, should ConocoPhillips, who I understand owns the mineral rights in various areas around, should they desire to exercise the rights to access and drill in that, that would require them to have separate approvals for ingress and egress into and make sure that those are accommodated when that happens.
Absolutely. That's a separate analysis that will be done either with the use by special review or the OGUSHER application.
I wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly and that it was on the record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My question was, what kind of, I'm like you, wouldn't necessarily be opposed to this system-wide look, but what concerns me are delays other than the funding. I mean, even if the funding were there, what does that extend in terms of the time frame, and does that impact the development here? Could that impact the development?
I think it could if we don't get started pretty soon. If we're going to go the systems level, the broader analysis, we need to get going on that, this year. And it's going to take some time to get all the agencies to commit to funding, IGAs, and items like that. So we need to get, and we're hoping that's going to come out of our next month's meeting, is an agreement either to proceed with that system level or to just go ahead with the project level analysis that we originally proposed.
I would not support something that's going to delay this development, because we feel like they have satisfied all of our requirements, and to expand the study, I think could be detrimental to this development when they have met our requirements. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I guess we'd have to talk about that at the time, but I don't think that would be fair to the developer.
Staff share.
And to our process.
Staff, both our transportation and our engineering staff, share your opinion on that. So I think we're going to try to make that abundantly clear to CDOT next month.
Good luck with that.
Great. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Haskins. Mr. Vogel?
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. My name is Jeff Vogel with Vogel & Associates, 475 West 12th Avenue. I'm pleased to come before you this morning to present the Prosper FDP Final Development Plan and Preliminary Plat. Real quickly, this thing turned on. Yeah, so what I wanted to do is, as you know, some of you were here when we did the Prosper Preliminary Development Plan, and there were specific cornerstones that we developed for Prosper in terms of directives and things that would guide design and programming and other components of the community. And we had outlined those in the preliminary development plan, and some of those, again, we continue to enhance or bring forward with the final development plan and the preliminary plat. And some of those items, cornerstones, was connected community and neighborhoods, which again I'll illustrate as I go through our plan and through the presentation how we meet some of these cornerstone objectives. Environmental and cultural awareness, that was another large consideration. We wanted to make sure that Prosper embraced the region in terms of architecture, design, landscape, being water-wise, those kind of considerations. Education, very important cornerstone component of Prosper. You know, the preliminary development plan has provisions for 6 school sites, one of which we are going to bring forward with this final development plan that's before you today. And then inspired design. You know, Prosper is envisioned to be a progressive community using state-of-the-art technologies, again, water-wise landscapes, multimodal transportation opportunities, those kind of items. And then health and wellness, which is also a very important consideration, not just for the buyers, but also other agencies such as Tri-County, who's weighed in on a lot of this. I mean, Prosper really has the ability to advance some of those objectives. So as I go forward here with this presentation, I'll illustrate how we've begun to, as I say, peel that onion from the PDP to the FDP, where we can really start to embrace these cornerstones. This is the master plan, the preliminary development plan, land use plan that was approved in February 10, 2015. The final development plan that's before you today is this acreage, this boundary here, the 754 acres that's located here to the northeast corner. We located this here primarily because of obviously the land uses. It includes some high density, some medium density, and some lower density planning areas and densities, and we liked the variety and the diversity that the land use and the densities allowed us to work with in this first final development plan, just because, as you may recall, again, one of our considerations is we want to provide a diversity of home types and sizes and price points, and so being able to utilize those land use classifications and planning areas was really helpful for us. Also, it's located kind of further to the northeast, where infrastructure is a little bit more readily available with regards to I-70 and the Watkins interchange and existing Watkins Road. So that was another consideration for why we chose this quadrant. With regards to the preliminary development plan, open space master plan, as you recall, you know, the intent is to maintain the integrity of Coyote Run drainage, the tributaries that also intersect with Coyote Run. So a portion of the Coyote Run drainage is located in the southwest quadrant of this FDP. We also have the perimeter open space as well, and then a comprehensive parks and open space system, which I'll also illustrate. So this is an enlargement of the final development plan that's before you today. It is approximately 754 acres. It's programmed to have 970 homes. These would be single-family homes that would have an array of home sites that would range from 5,000 square feet to an acre. Again, as you recall in the land use plan I just showed you, this was kind of the medium density land use classification quadrant, where you see in these brown lots and lighter lots, these are probably the higher density in terms of 5,000, 6,000 square foot home sites. And as we go to the east, the home sites get larger, density less, with regards to 7,000, 8,000 square foot home sites and into an acre. So in keeping with the parameters of the land use plan and the vision for Prosper, the center is to have a little bit more of a higher density, and as we work towards the perimeter and the edge, we start dropping density. So the FDP is consistent with those plan areas, densities, development standards that were outlined in the preliminary development plan. We are not requesting any variations or any variances to the preliminary development plan that was approved. and I'll speak about this a little bit further too, is that we are going to have, we're going to also have a comprehensive amenities program that we're going to implement with our phase one. That'll include a discovery and market center. It'll also include a community center and 7 parks as well, and a comprehensive trail system. The community center and discovery center will be coming before the board as 2 separate applications, as Mr. Skinner said. But we're excited about that. We really believe that's going to be an important element and really further define the heart and soul of what will be our first community at Prosper. What you'll notice here is that what we've done with the land plan and the actual site plan is that this is existing Watkins Road running north and south. This road here will be what is called a connector road. It'll be our connector road that you will arrive into Prosper. We'll have a discovery center, which again is that Discovery Market Center, which I'll talk a little bit about that. Will be located up here at the intersection of the connector road and Watkins Road. And what that Discovery Center will be, it'll be kind of a place where buyers and even residents utilize to learn about Prosper, to learn about the community. We won't necessarily be utilizing it for real estate sales. It's more about what's the community about, and it'll also be a gathering place for if we have, a garden club or those kind of things, they can gather at the Discovery Center. And again, we'll have more detail on that when we bring that application forward. But that would be the first thing that you would see. And then as you traverse south, you run into what will be our community center, this oval that you see. That'll be in phase one, our very first phase that you'll come into, and that'll serve as like a focal point. What you see here with the site plan is this is what we call like a modified grid of streets. So we're using local streets, and we're doing it kind of and we're configuring them in a modified fashion. It's not necessarily the Denver grid, but it has the same utility as like the Denver grid, if you will, in terms that it provides motorists and pedestrians alternative ways to circulate through the community and to exit through the community. So conversely, old traditional suburban configurations where you have collector roads and then you have a bunch of cul-de-sacs that come off of those, and then what ends up happening is that it really loads up your cul-de-sacs and your arterials, whereas if you can disperse traffic utilizing a modified grid, it's a lot more efficient with regards to traffic. Also, utilizing a modified grid, it creates walkable blocks, which again, we talked about connectivity, health and wellness, really encouraging pedestrian activity. So that's why we also came up with this block system, if you will. And the reason why we like kind of the modified system was it works a little bit better with the topography. We also kind of like the kind of the rural character that it provides as opposed to a strong urban Denver grid. So those are some of the considerations there as well. Again, this also illustrates to the south the Coyote Run drainage. Again, our intent is to maintain the integrity of that drainage to the extent practical. We really don't want to over-channelize it. We don't want to do large concrete channels or anything like that. We are working with Arapahoe County on improving that, enhancing that, to make sure that it has the proper drop structures and things in it, so it works well. But our intent is to really keep it as a natural open space, and that's what we mean by maintaining green infrastructure is work with what you have, utilize what you have. It's more of a sustainable concept. The other thing, a little bit more about the streets again, was I talked about the modified grid. The other thing that we have worked with Arapahoe County and Public Works Department a lot is creating pedestrian streets. And what this shows down to the left is this is a local street system. And one of the things we've designed, you'll see these are kind of what we call bulb outs with these green areas. And these are pedestrian crossings. So when you get to an intersection, it narrows up a little bit. And what it does is it slows down traffic running through streets. It kind of, when you get to a little more of a condensed area, you have a tendency to slow down a little bit. And also it creates a better opportunity for pedestrians to cross a safer area as well. So that was something that with Prosper and this FDP, we brought forward some street sections that we've worked diligently with staff on to do something that is, efficiently moves traffic, but is a little bit more pedestrian friendly than your traditional suburban street. The other consideration is also, again, the open space perimeter that is also an element of Prosper. that goes around the perimeter, as you saw in the land use master plan. I wanted to talk a little bit about the oil and gas well. As Mr. Skinner and Mr. Hill said, identify, this is not necessarily an approval for an oil and gas site, but there is, it is out there. A little bit about that, ConocoPhillips. When we first started working on Prosper, it was Anadarko. And Anadarko came to us, and they had 3 sites they were going to drill, and they were at different places, and we went pretty far down a path with them. And then they kind of left the table, and they leased their assets or sold their assets to ConocoPhillips, who had a different program in a different way. They wanted to access the Niobrara. So we have been working with them since 2014, on and off. They've been, because of the market and oil prices, they tell us sometimes they're going to drill 3 and they do 1. And so it's kind of been a little bit of a moving target. But with each USR, a special review that comes through, they do usually come and talk to us. We do have a surface use agreement that we wanted to protect Prosper as well as adjacent property owners. And that surface use agreement has considerations in there, for example, of having low-profile tanks, no permanent lighting, provisions for berming and landforms. It's something that we are obviously very, very concerned of and critical of, truthfully. Screening the facilities with permanent fencing, not just a barbed wire or wildlife fencing. So these are things that we've really been monitoring very closely with them. As it relates to, and the wells they have drilled on Prosper to date has been Section 11 and Section 14, which they started back in 2014. And they're just now are drilling another well in Section 2, which is in our very northwest corner of the property up by Hayes Mountain, I-70. And we have been working with them to make sure that they do the things that's in our surface use agreement. So far, they have been a pretty good partner. There's always negotiations. The other big thing that we ask them to do is to recess their pads as much as they possibly can. So in some cases, we've had them recessed 6 to 7 feet. They've done a pretty good job with their landforms. When I say landforms, berming. This can be observed at the Section 2 one that they are just now graded. So they've been a good partner in that regard. They have a right to their rental rights. We want to protect our surface as well. So it's a negotiation. It's something we have to work with. As it relates to the Section 6 site that has come up in the staff report and also some of the correspondence, as Mr. Skinner said, they did submit an SUA for that property, USR, and they were proceeding forward, and then they pulled it. They took it back, and now we have not seen them in a new document. We don't know what they're going to do and not necessarily how many wells or where the wells exactly are. But when they did do that, we started negotiating with them and talking to them. And what this exhibit here shows is where the location of that is. This pad site, operations pad site, is located in what is planning area 12, which is a low-density residential planning area for us. The perimeter green area, open space area, is what you see obviously in the lime green here. That's around the perimeter. And by the way, this was the previous pad site that they had submitted to the county, so we were using this as our only guide at this point. And their wells were located, the actual wellheads were located in the center of the site. The wells themselves were 1,000 feet away from the closest house to Watkins Farm, and then be approximately 461 feet from our home site to the west. This, by the way, where this is located in our planning area 12, impacted approximately 27.4 acres of our development land. So, our thought was we wanted to still maintain the integrity of the open space buffer. So we allowed them to also go further west to work with us. We wanted to create also additional area around this. You'll barely see these red blobs. These are berms that are going to be outside of their operations area that was more of a Prosper request, that we wanted to make sure there was adequate berming for us and also on the east side between Watkins Farm and the pad sites. One of the other things that came up in Planning Commission as well was some discussion about egress. And again, this is ConocoPhillips. It's their well, it's their process. They need to secure their points of access. Their primary access would be off of existing 6th Avenue and obviously proposed 6th Avenue. This is what you see in the black is the realignment of 6th. 6th right now today is a 2-lane road that goes just like this, east-west. So someday it will eventually be realigned as an arterial. One of the things that we are, while we don't know what ConocoPhillips' timing is or design is for this pad site, we have been working with them on second point of access for emergency vehicles out of Watkins Farm. Just because, as you can see, we own the land, obviously, in the green. And so if there's something that Prosper can do to help facilitate that in terms of providing an easement or emergency vehicle access that would allow a third point of access outside of Watkins Farm, we would do that. And we've also been working with the adjacent property owner here to also share in that access that could potentially exit out onto Colfax and then back to Watkins Road and I-70. So that's kind of the idea there. And so we've been having discussions, including this week, about how can we get that done. So again, while that's, it's one of these things, while that's ConocoPhillips' obligation, if we can do something to help out Watkins Farm, help out the community, help out Bennett Fire Department, we'll do that. So that's a little bit about the oil and gas well. As I mentioned, our two primary amenities in Phase 1 will be our Discovery Center. This is the element, which will also include a farmers market pavilion. This will be located at that Connector Road intersection and Watkins Road. In keeping with our goals and vision of cultural regional awareness, we're embracing the agrarian architectural forms. Prosper's always been envisioned and to reflect a small eastern Colorado community. And so this is a grain elevator. Again, in the first floor would be the actual Discovery Center where you go in and learn, and then we also have some small gathering rooms and meeting rooms in that as well. So that's kind of like what would be almost like our entry monument, if you will, when you're coming south on Watkins Road. And again, we'll come before you with a lot more details on that. And then our community center, which again is located in Phase 1 in that oval, would just be that. It would include a multi-purpose room, a fitness center, a family pool and splash garden, an outdoor pavilion, and also some limited food and beverage as well, including also an outdoor event lawn to host, again, community gatherings. That's a very important consideration for Prosper, is creating gathering areas that are meaningful. This is the Phase 1 Parks and Trails Plan. Includes 7 parks. As I said, this is the Connector A that comes down. This is the community center where it'll be located. That'll include a event lawn and multi-purpose playfield. And then there's our neighborhood park, sports park, and then we have these pocket parks that we're utilizing as smaller gathering areas or greens for the community, for each of the neighborhoods. To the very south here in that lime green color is an elementary school site that we've located that would be accessible by the Connector Road and also by the trail system that we've located here. And we have in the first phase here, we have over 6.5 miles of trails. And again, that's another really important component of Prosper, is the trail system. Number one requested amenity by far in any master plan community today. If it's primary or secondary homes, it's trails, 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 and meaningful trails. And so we have the opportunity of Prosper to really create a great trail system with several loops and that can be utilized by different types of user groups. With regards to the parks, we wanted to locate a park or an amenity, an overlook within a quarter mile of each neighborhood, of each residence. So somebody would have within a quarter mile, because that's usually a 10-minute walk, that somebody can walk to a destination. So that was part of some of the considerations of why we located these where they are. And then you see these light this different color of green, this darker green colors, well, these are all trail corridors, passages that the neighborhoods can access and circulate to get to the amenities or the respective parks, including the community center. You'll see where there's a open space trail system that also connects to the community center. And again, the streets, we see the streets as pedestrian corridors. So making sure that they terminate into parks, they terminate in the community center, including the pocket parks, was also an important consideration. Off to the left is enlargements of some of the parks. This is a pocket park that's located over here, that's located here, and each of these parks are themed a little bit differently. Some of them will have more of an emphasis on active recreation in terms of sports courts and playgrounds, parks, those kind of things. And then there's others that might be a little bit more passive and educational. The park up here at the top, it's one of our community garden concepts. Again, in keeping with our cornerstone of health and wellness, locally grown food, celebrating that, reinforcing that. We have programmed 3 of our parks in Prosper to have community garden plots. Prosper will continue, and I say Prosper, the actual Prosper will continue to farm this perimeter. We farm the land today. We have an entity called Farming America, and right now we're farming over 30,000 acres in eastern Colorado. So we're very committed to locally grown food and crops. And so being able to do that at the macro scale on the perimeter and also being able to bring it down to the neighborhood park level, we think is a really important piece of Prosper. But these show, again, some of them have an emphasis with orchards, garden plots, playgrounds, different kinds of playgrounds. This is another park that we have located, which is kind of interesting. We call this Windmill Park, but it's really an interpretive educational park. And the idea is that it would have a large community garden element with a pavilion for gatherings and potlucks. We also, as I said, Prosper and our Farming America, we're really committed to advancements of dryland farming and celebrating dryland farming, and we're trying to do some really interesting things and innovations with that. So having a program there that illustrates that and educates the importance of dryland farming and food production, we think would be great to have in this park. And then I talked about water-wise, and at Prosper with our development standards that are in the FDP and our PDP, xeric landscaping, responding to the environment, is really important. So we're going to have a xeric garden here that helps homeowners really understand plants and what they look like in the seasons and how you properly landscape in this environment. So, and this also, there's more of a passive, this would be predominantly native grasses, clusters of trees, a little bit more reflective areas. And then over to the right is our neighborhood sports park. This includes a multi-purpose play field, some sports courts, playgrounds for different age groups, larger pavilion for community gatherings, those kind of things. So each of these parks is a little bit different and a little bit more meaningful, and they really accommodate a diverse, user group that we envision being in Prosper. The Prosper architectural style, it's something that we talked about in our PDP and our FDP. We have specific standards for architecture. You hear craftsman style or you hear prairie style. Well, Prosper has its own style. We call it the Prosper style. And it does embrace agrarian forms, timeless architectural styles, wraparound porches, use some materials that are responsible for that part of the county. And also, sustainability, active and passive design with regards to renewables. We do have a requirement that all of our homes are going to be Energy Star compliant. Some builders we've talked to on a preliminary level are very committed to that. We think our buyers, that's something that they will really be looking for. So we're excited about that. And then the Prosper style also includes that landscape concept I talked about in terms of being water-wise, using turf where it's going to get used, where it makes sense, those types of considerations. And that's, again, all outlined in our FDP and our development standards. With regards to the phasing, it's 970 home sites. We are estimating it'll be implemented over 10 years. It'll be done in four general phases. Phase 1A on the left, again, this is the interchange, Watkins Road, Connector Row A. This would be the first set of lots, would be approximately 442 lots. So to include the community center, include the parks, would be Phase 1A. Existing 6th Avenue would remain as it is today, there east and west. Then our next phase would be to add another neighborhood to the southwest, again maintaining 6th Avenue, Watkins Road. And then as we go into Phase 1C, we begin to go to the south side of existing 6th Avenue, adding probably more of a lower density product segmentation to the southeast. And then finally, we add the last phase, which adheres like in the center, which you see blank. We add that section in, which then would require the realignment of 6th Avenue. So that's the idea, and that's something that, as Mr. Haskins said, our traffic report contemplates the study that we would phase it this way and phase the roads. And so, again, the alignments of 6th Avenue, Watkins Road is all consistent with our preliminary development plan and our transportation plan that was also approved with the development plan. The preliminary plat that's before you today is, again, the 442 lots. This being existing Watkins Road, what I call the connector road that come into the community center focal point, and then the respective local streets and single-family home sites. So this would be our first preliminary plat that we would like to move forward with. So with that concludes my presentation. I'm obviously available for questions.
Questions? Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Vogel, for being here today and giving us your very thorough presentation. You had spoken of the green areas at intersections as the intersections and the streets narrow to make it more pedestrian friendly. And I was just curious, those little green areas that you were showing around the corners, what is that exactly? Is that like a raised concrete? Is that just something on the surface that is like bubbly to, that you would tread under, or what are we talking about there in those little green areas around the corners?
This would be the curb of the street here, and the curb would come around and define those bump outs. So the raised curb would define it, and then the actual surface of them would be landscape. Would either be some type of like shrubs or ground covers would actually be there, and then obviously there's actually a pedestrian connection that goes through there so you can cross the intersection.
Okay, so that green area would be like shrubs and landscape?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Along with the required hardscape for the pedestrians to actually get across. But yeah, that's the idea, is that when you turn, it's when you see landscape and you see those elements that it slows you down.
Okay.
And it also it kind of reduces the paving. Now, there's obviously sight distance requirements there that we have to be mindful of, so we can't put large trees and things like that. So we've worked with staff and on making sure that there's not any obstructions on that.
And will there be, some sort of raised kind of edging around what's going to be shrubs?
Well, that'll be the concrete curb.
Okay, so the concrete curb will be on the exterior. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be like a 6-inch concrete curb.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Holden.
Mr. Vogel, thank you very much for your eloquent and concise presentation. You mentioned in the presentation of the phasing of more affordable housing into larger plots. What would be the range of those smaller units, single-family units, in the first that you discussed?
Yeah. So the first, we'd have a range of home sites from 5,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet in terms of the home sites, the lots. So you're talking probably homes that are from 1,500, 1,800 square feet up to 2,800 to 3,000.
Okay.
On the bigger.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Vogel, I just had a couple questions. The height of the berms that I think you already said that there were some, and specifically for that site 6, what are you anticipating the berms would be in that area around if something is drilled there at some point in the future?
What we had when they were doing the previous application, doing that, we were talking about 7-foot high berms.
Okay.
7 to 8, and we wanted them undulating. We didn't want them to be just, and so we were minimum around 7 feet, and then they could go up 8. And again, what we did at Section 2 is an excellent example of what we were trying to achieve.
And lowering the tanks so that...
Yeah, in our SUA, in our surface use agreement, we do have a provision for low profile tanks.
Okay. The second question is access from Watkins Road. Is that, which will ultimately be the 6th Avenue realignment, but getting in off of, is the only access that connector road initially, or am I kind of looking at something that comes off of Watkins and goes...
Yeah, there's one there as well.
Okay, and this one below your community center, it kind of comes in and, yeah. And
So there'll be Phase 1A. Phase 1A, you'll be able to access it through the connector road, through existing 6th Avenue, and through off of Watkins Road down here.
Okay.
And then with the modified grid, we obviously have multiple access points internally.
Okay. And so ultimately, the 6th Avenue extension will be that one right below, right there, and that'll be proposed to be a roundabout?
This here.
In that area below your community center?
No, that'll just be a full movement access.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be potentially signalized.
Okay. Let's see. 2 more. Access to Colfax. So should there be, and we can talk about that later, but if ConocoPhillips comes forward with an application, but you're thinking in terms of access ultimately for drilling or ultimately any access to the oil and gas site, it would come from the north into that area rather than 6th Avenue. Is that currently what you're trying to propose?
Well, what we understood was a concern from the county when, again, ConocoPhillips was moving forward with an application, was if they drill this, which, by the way, if they moved forward, they could be in front of us, was what's the second point of access should there be an issue here to get out? Because right now, again, this is right here, this is their access to existing 6th Avenue, which goes like this. So they said, what happens if there's an issue? Is there another way for residents of Watkins Farm to get out? And one of the things we've talked about was coming off of here with an emergency access and then heading to the north. Because we own this piece of property right here, and then we're working with this property owner. Between the 2 of us, can we get an easement figured out?
Okay.
And it's part of that separate application that they're working on. But I just want to let you know that's what. So if once we get that done, then they would not evacuate on 6th Avenue. They would go literally to Colfax and then to the I-70 interchange.
And if that comes forward, I guess my only comment is, heavy truck traffic on roads that you'll be putting in, which will be more residential roads, and that those heavy trucks will not be appropriate, I guess, for that. So just if they come forward, just a consideration.
Yeah.
And I think that you answered my question. I thought maybe that was going to be a roundabout south of your community center, but it'll be full movement. So I think that was.
And by the way, that's a good point, what you brought about the trucks, because that's the reason why we want them accessing off of 6th Avenue. What is the 6th Avenue today, and what's 6th Avenue in the future? Yeah. We don't necessarily want them, if they were to come back and do something, we don't want them going through the neighborhoods. And to be fair to them, they don't want it either.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty strong about that. So I think we're aligned in that area.
Because it does bring about not only road impacts, but safety issues when kids are going to school and things like that. Because we've had, as the community is built out, we've had those kinds of questions too, and worked with ConocoPhillips on safety when kids are waiting for at a bus stop or something. Now, I understand a lot of these kids are going to be walking, but either way, could be safety issues. Commissioner Conti.
Thank you, Madam
And then
Chair. You had
Commissioner
talked
Jackson.
about the 7-foot berms around with regard to the oil and gas development and the fact that low profile tanks had been requested. What is the height of the low profile tanks, and so therefore how much would be visible above the 7-foot berms?
Well, the reason why we chose 7-foot berms because they're also cutting, again, what they were doing back then. I can't speak to what the new application looks like for the previous application. They were cutting it down 6 to 7 feet from existing grade. Mm-hmm. And so the maximum that they could go on the tanks was 16 feet plus the 7 so we have cutting it down around 7 feet plus a 7-foot berm. So that goes up to 8. So
okay,
that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, now for something completely different. When you originally came to us with the full design, you mentioned commercial and as well as residential, and was this whole community. I didn't see any commercial development in this piece, and I was wondering what's the phasing of that?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, what we'd like our the intent would be is you see the red zone up in here. There's a discovery center, like I said, we'll have some food and beverage up there. There'll be some what I'd call commercial related uses, but it's mostly a community driven program. But our intent would be is, truthfully to establish some critical mass here in terms of residential and population, and then start building the commercial up in this zone. We just really feel like, because of the market and what's out there, we'd like to get the residential critical mass. Now, we have another subsidiary of our company that does a lot of commercial, and so we would like to maybe do that. We'd like to get that going sooner than later, but we also have to just be mindful of the marketplace. But we really feel that to be successful as we develop our residential piece, that bringing on services at the appropriate time is going to be an important factor. So finding that balance is going to be something we're going to continue to look at.
Mr. Jackson.
Not entirely a facetious comment, but from what I understand, Amazon is not going to be far from you, and I understand that that's going to be the way that people get their food, and I guess Target's announced they're going to be doing same day or next day delivery, so who knows what the stores of the future, even if they're going to exist at all. So that's an interesting thing for you to have to think about, I suppose. But
yeah, no, anyway, it is. It's changing.
It is changing, yeah. But there's going to be employment out there because of some of these new developments. So.
Well, yeah, we're excited about the Amazon facility. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And then Commissioner Conti.
Good morning, Mr. Paul.
Morning.
I think you began your presentation by saying that the preliminary development plan is essentially the final plat or the preliminary plat and the final development plan. You were asking for no variances, no changes. The periphery showing the open space, how was that labeled in the preliminary plan?
It's
was it labeled exactly the same way?
Yeah, it's planning area 12. This is it.
Okay.
So this is the actual plan. What this is a composite of the FDP lot layout on top of the preliminary development plan land use plan.
I see. And so that Swan Wells, the oil and gas development site, was also listed on the preliminary development plan, or had it developed that far at that point?
It had not developed. They had not designed or made a development proposal at that time. But oil and gas is a permitted use in all the land use of Prosper. And again, there's some of these, we've talked to them about operation sites and where they could go over the years, but there's some they are pursuing and there's some not. For example, at our very, hold on here, down here at our southeast corner, they had talked to us once upon a time about an operation site here on our land to access their mineral rights here, but instead they went through a USR process and located it down here off of Imboden and are accessing it accessing mineral rights from there. They thought it was going to be easier to do that than to work with us over here, I guess. So, what I'm saying is it's kind of a, lack of a better term, it's kind of a moving target with them. Until they make an application, until they come to us and they say, this is what we're going to do, can I answer how many wells and what they're going to do? And so we work with them and we pull out the USR and say, the SUA, and we say, well, this is what you're responsible for, and we start working with them.
Commissioner Baker. And south on Imboden Road, I was hearing when we talk about the emergency vehicle access, you were talking about going north to Colfax and then eventually marrying up with Watkins. Was there any consideration given to, I understand that south of 6th Avenue on Imboden, there's a small, maybe just dirt track that goes west to 6th Avenue that might also be considered as a emergency vehicle access if and when needed, but it has a chain going across it or something.
Yeah, the one that you're talking about, the one that's directly south of Watkins Farm.
Yes.
And there's a chain that says emergency use for emergency. Yeah, that's.
Has that been considered as another possible?
I think it has been considered as.
That's not actually on land that Prosper.
Yeah, we don't own that land, but I think my understanding is when Watkins Farm was approved as a subdivision, that was something that Bennett Fire wanted, was another emergency vehicle access on that road that you're talking about.
Okay.
Versus chain, and for it to go to the west. So that exists, that's there. We don't control that. And that does go to 6th Avenue, like you said. And what we've heard is that, well, geez, can we get another emergency vehicle access that doesn't go on 6th Avenue but goes somewhere to the north, like Colfax or something like that? So that's what we're working on right now with ConocoPhillips and the other property owners.
Commissioner Conti.
Thank you. One final question. You talked about food and beverage at the front of the main entrance of the development. Are you talking about food trucks? Are you talking about fast food? Are you talking about? Okay.
Possibly, yeah, be a food truck and something we could also move around the community. We could take it to the community center. We could take it to the sports park. Again, it's another interactive component with the community garden element too, that you could do some neat things with it. And we could also do like a culinary kitchen with it, classes. So that's something that we've been exploring. And one of our other subsidiaries has done some things with food truck as well. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Vogel. I will open the public hearing, and again, we'll take testimony on both the P16-021 preliminary plat and P16-022 Prosper 1 final development plan. So I have Ms. Crawford, who is against but does not desire to speak. Is that still okay on both of these? And then I have Mr. Crawford, who is against and doesn't desire to speak as well. Is that still correct? Okay. So then I have Susan Danke. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And is against but would like to speak. Yes, welcome. Come on down. And you have 3 minutes, and you'll see the yellow light come on at about 2.5 minutes, and then the red light will ask you just to wrap up your comments.
I do have another packet. Thank you for letting me speak. Good morning.
Okay.
It may be a little redundant from what he had presented to you earlier, so if you don't mind, if you could take that up. And again, it's just another packet from Mrs. Roberts along with our attorney.
Okay, and if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Susan Danke, 1500 South Elm Street, Watkins, Colorado. So I'm speaking on behalf of not only the Watkins Farms, but also our Watkins Task Force, which we have formed to encompass not just the Watkins Farms residents, but everybody else, which includes 80-plus rural acreage properties to the southeast of the Prosper Farms development. So with that, we are in opposition of the Prosper Farms final development plan and preliminary plat. We request that the Prosper Farms holds additional community meetings to discuss the oil and gas locations with neighboring communities, and allow time to comment on those proposals. Now, with what he has said, obviously none of the applications have been submitted as of yet from Conoco, but we would really like to work with both Conoco and Prosper Farms as a community as a whole to encompass the rest of us, not just Watkins Farms, to be a part of that. Our concern is that some of the first two community meetings held in 2014 and 16, design documents shared with residents showed open space next to Imboden Road with the low-density houses of 1+ acres next to the open space. Prosper Farms did not reveal that there was any signed surface use agreement with ConocoPhillips that was signed on June 16, 2014, that is also part of public record. So that we asked specifically and was not stated that that is what was going on at the time. As far as I know, this is the first time Prosper Farms has mentioned any surface use agreement with ConocoPhillips that any of us are aware of. I don't know if it has been shared with you as the commissioners, with the county at all. Today is the first day that we've heard it mentioned directly from Prosper Farms. My other concern going through with this meeting is, again, with the 6th Avenue, that's our only ingress and egress for the entire population back there. Again, not just to encompass Watkins Farms. This also includes the 80+ homes that we have further into that neighborhood with no other outlet. Where I live, that road ends. There is no other outlet for anybody or for anybody to come in. Emergency vehicles, school buses, all of the things that we rely on out there. So that is a huge concern. I know that stuff doesn't encompass Prosper Farms, but there are other roads out there that potentially could run out to Watkins Road. So as a county, we're asking for you to look at that as well. Otherwise, we only have 6th Avenue to come in and out, which is a really huge concern. We're looking at almost 1,000 new homes in that area with only one road for all of us to access, to come in and out. And it's a little alarming. And again, looking at the additional traffic that if those oil sites are approved, if you guys are only looking at the north end to go on to Colfax, I don't know if that's going to be appropriate. Again, if you go further south on Imboden, there's already a ConocoPhillips site being drilled right now off of Imboden in Mississippi. There is a dirt road from there that goes directly out to Watkins Road. If that's something that can be looked at in the future, if these oil and gas sites do get approved, I'd really urge you to consider additional ingress and egress, not only for the community, but also for the additional truck traffic. I think that is about all I have. I'm out of time anyway, so I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will, as stated earlier, if those additional well sites are proposed, we'll definitely take, as we always do, take a look at traffic, ingress, egress, and impacts to surrounding communities from
and again,
the
that's something
development.
that we obviously will keep our finger on as well. Again, because it, as you know, it affects all of us.
Yeah.
And again, not just Prosper Farms, not just Watkins Farms, but again, we've got 80+ homes with multiple residents within those homes.
We definitely, if that comes forward, we'll definitely look. That's part of our process.
Absolutely, and I thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak on either of these, the public hearing items this morning? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional questions from the board to staff or to the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I do have
Commissioner Baker.
I have a question for Bob Hill, just real. And as we were discussing the draft motions to approve or deny, the one that was changed was for P16022. Will both P16021 and 022, is there one motion or do they have to be separate motions?
I thought it might be a good idea to include the additional condition, number 3, in both motions.
But make separate motions.
Yeah, you'll definitely need separate motions in either case for.
The draft motions that I have for P16021 has one condition only, and it's different than the number 1 condition for P16-022. Oh, I've been given and updated, so it would actually be condition number 2.
So, right.
But number 3 on this one.
Right.
Got it. I think I'm clear on that. So, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Mr. Baker.
In the case of P16-021, Prosper number 1 preliminary plat, I have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearing, and hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to signature of the final copy of these plans, the applicant must address Public Works staff comments and concerns. 2. Approval of this plat does not constitute approval of any oil and gas or other mineral recovery operations on any of the site locations within the Prosper development. Oil and gas or other mineral recovery operations are subject to review under the Arapahoe County Land Development Code through a use by special review or an administrative use by special review upon application submitted by the person or entity who seeks to commence such operations. Approval of this plat does not in any way excuse the need for a use by special review or administrative use by special review approval prior to commencing such operations, and does not limit the county's review of any such applications.
Motion made by Commissioner Baker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Conti. Any further questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. I will call for a motion on, P16-022, Prosper number 1, Final Development Plan. Commissioner Baker?
In the case of P16-022, Prosper number 1, Final Development Plan, I have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and any public comment as presented at the hearing, and hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to signature of the final copy of these plans, the applicant must address comments and concerns to the satisfaction of the Public Works staff as identified during the review of the P16-022 application. Number 2, the approval of the P16-022 final development plan is conditioned on the approval of the concurrent P16-021 Prosper number 1 preliminary plat. 3, approval of this plan does not constitute approval of any oil and gas or any other mineral recovery operations on any of the site locations within the Prosper development. Oil and gas or other mineral recovery operations are subject to review under the Arapahoe County Land Development Code through a use by special review or an administrative use by special review upon application submitted by the person or entity who seeks to commence such operations. Approval of this plan does not in any way excuse the need for a use by special review or administrative use by special review approval prior to commencing such operations and does not limit the county's review of any such applications.
Motion made by Commissioner Baker. I'll ask for a second. Commissioner Holen.
I will second.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Holen. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Are there any commissioner comments today? Commissioner Baker.
I just wanted to point out that today is August 15th, which is the 72nd anniversary of the independence of South Korea from 35 years of brutal occupation by Japan. And so I just want to congratulate the Korean American community here in Arapahoe County on this significant anniversary.
Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about our discussion around oil and gas and say that there are constituencies around the state that would like a little more local control of setbacks and so on, but those initiatives are consistently not passed either in the legislature or by referendum. So we are very limited as to what we can do in terms of location of oil and gas operations. It's considered a private property right and regulated by the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission.
Commissioner Holen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to ask all of us to send out our hearts and prayers to those individuals who were the survivors and the young lady that was killed in the Charlottesville attacks. I've been concerned for many years about the rise of hate groups across this country. And I'm reminded of Dr. Martin Luther King's statement back in the 60s when he said that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Holen. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And we are